If white balance is a fundamental part of making good images, then understanding how your camera allows you to interact with and what it is telling you about white balance is a fundamental part of using your camera. What's up everybody, I'm Jason and welcome back to some more tips and tricks for the Canon EOS R5. So in this video we'll be continuing my series of videos looking at white balance on the EOS R5, and this time around we're going to be looking at the user interface on the camera and how you interact with it to either tell what white balance mode you're in or to change the white balance mode you're in. So we're going to take a look at the iconography that Canon uses for white balance settings. We're going to take a look at how to tell what white balance mode your camera is currently set to, how to change that white balance mode, and then we're going to familiarize ourselves with the white balance shift and bracketing menu, as well as the white balance or custom white balance setup process. Now, before I can talk about where you should look for and where the settings are for white balance on the EOS R5, I do have to talk about how Canon displays white balance information, and specifically that Canon uses icons to display all of the white balance information on their cameras. So this is in menus, this is on the display overlays while shooting, and this is also the case when you are looking at images in the image review to see how they were set or what the camera was set to when they were shot. So you will not find, outside of this specific case of you shooting in color temperature mode, you will not find a color temperature or color correction message for any of the basic white balance settings. So what are these icons? Now there are 10 modes on all of these current cameras. So these modes are auto white balance, ambience priority, the default auto white balance mode, auto white balance white priority, the alternate white balance auto white balance mode, daylight, shade, cloudy, twilight and sunset, tungsten, white fluorescent, flash, custom, and color temperature. Anywhere you go to look at the white balance on the camera, these are the icons that you will have seen instead of some kind of textual description. One place where this comes up and can become a little problematic is if you're trying to, say, transfer settings from one camera to another camera, and you say go into the image review and you want to see what the camera figured the white balance was when it was in auto, or what white balance the camera, what color temperature the camera is using in, say, custom. In either of these cases, you're fresh out of luck. The camera just will not tell you. Speaking of image review, one of the first things that you might want to do when looking at images is see where what white balance mode that image was shot in. This would be especially true if the color looks extremely off in the image. So to do this, when you're looking at the image in playback mode, you're going to need to have the most detailed image information displayed on the camera. So hit the info button to show all of the information in a screen that looks something like this. Then on the first page where it tells you the exposure information, it will also tell you the white balance that the camera was set to. So you'll find this on the second row of information all the way on the left-hand side. With that said, you might want to know what your camera is set to white, or what white balance mode your camera is set to when you are before you shoot an image. So there are a number of places on the camera where you can go to look to see what white balance the camera is in when you are preparing to shoot an image. So these include the LCD and viewfinder overlays. On the top LCD, through the shooting info display or the shooting info number 5 screen, as well as any of the menus where you can go to change the white balance. So let's take a look at these in turn to orient ourselves with the various locations of the white balance information. The first place to look is either the LCD or viewfinder or EVF overlays. Now, to get these overlays or to get the white balance information in these overlays, you have to be looking at an overlay that has detailed shooting information turned on. So if you don't see the column of icons on the left and right side of your screen, press the info button until that comes up. By default, one of the EVF or LCD overlays will include all of the detailed shooting information. information. Now you can turn the detailed shooting information off through the customization capabilities of the camera. In either case, the white balance icon will be found on the right-hand column of icons, and it will be the second icon down from the top on the screen. Now the next place you could go to look for your white balance information is on the top LCD. Now, this will not be displayed on the primary screen that you see normally on the top LCD. You have to switch to the second standby screen or the second information screen. Now, the way to do this by default is to press or short press the button right next to the LCD screen, the one with the little light or lamp icon next to it, and this will toggle between the first and second info panels. Now, whether you're shooting in video mode or stills mode, the icon that you're looking for white balance will be on the front row, so the lens side of the panel, on the right-handmost position. In video mode, there'll only be 2 icons up there. In still mode, there will be 3, but the white balance will always be the rightmost icon. Now, the final status screen, you could call it, that you could go about looking for your white balance information is what I call the shooting information display, what Canon, I think, calls the info screen number 5 or the number 5 info screen now based on how they tell you to toggle it on and off in the settings. You can get to this screen by pressing the info button until you see a screen that looks like this, and this, of course, has all of your current shooting info and a whole bunch of camera configuration settings. If you don't see this, this can be enabled or disabled through that Shoot 7 menu, the screen setting info submenu, and you can turn on or off the number 5 display there. In any event, the white balance will be on the third or middle row, depending on how you want to look at it, of icons, one in from the left. Now, of course, I said the last place you could go to check the current white balance settings is in any of the places where you can go to change the white balance settings, which is a perfect segue into talking about how to change white balance modes on the EOS R5. There are a total of 4 ways to go about doing this. You can use the camera's menus, you can use the quick control menus, so this is either the quick control menu that's displayed as a screen overlay or through the number 5 info screen, or you can use the dial function menu, which is by default programmed to come up on the MFN button on the front of the camera next to the shutter release. We'll start by talking about the menu system, where in the menus all of this is. So on the EOS R5 and R6, you will find the white balance settings on the Shoot 3 menu page. So it will actually be the top 3 entries on that page: white balance, custom white balance, and white balance shift and bracket. Now, to change white balance modes, we're going to go to the topmost of those, which is just white balance, where you'll be presented with a list of 8 or 9 different white balance icons. Now, you'll remember I said there are 10 modes on the camera. Well, the auto white balance modes are not broken out separately. They are hidden in the combination of that button. Additionally, if you're shooting in video mode, there is no flash setting available, so that will be hidden. So from this list, you can, first of all, change white balance modes. All you have to do is use the dial, the multi-controller, or the touch screen to select the mode that you want to be in. Some of these modes have additional functions that are available for you to use or manipulate based on what is currently selected. So if you select the auto white balance mode, which is the one all the way on the left, and you press the info button on the camera, you'll be able to change between the 2 auto white balance specializations. Likewise, if you select the color temperature mode, which is the K icon all the way on the right, you can use the front dial to change the color temperature that white balance is set to. Finally, in this menu, you can select the custom color temperature mode. However, you can't change what that color temperature mode is set to. To do that, you need to use the custom white balance menu entry back in that Shoot 3 menu. Now, the next place that you can go to adjust your color temperature mode is through the quick control menu. So this applies whether you're using the live overlay or the live view overlays that you can access, or through the Shoot information screen or the number 5 info screen. In either case, you're going to press the quick control button. That's the Q with the box around it to bring up the quick control menu. Now, if you are using the live overlay, you can either use the touch, the rear dial, or up and down on the multi-controller to change which setting you're making adjustments to. Or you can use the front or top dial or left and right on the multi-controller to change the setting that is set to. Well, and touch as well. If you are using the screen info or the quick control menu from the screen or the number 5 info screen, then you can only use touch or the multi-controller to select a setting. You can use the dials to change that setting, or in many cases, you can press the set button to jump to an advanced menu that gives you more capabilities. So in the case of white balance, if you are using the number 5 info screen, when you select white balance, if you press set, you will have the same capabilities that you have if you are using the overlay without having to do anything. If you just need to change the white balance, you can use the dial to change the white balance mode there. Now, the quick control menu provides a whole host of options, basically combining all of the capabilities that were in separate menu items into one interactive or one interface element. So, of course, you can change the white balance simply by selecting a new white balance. If you are in select auto white balance, you can hit the set button and change which of the specializations that you are using there. And if you select the color temperature mode, you can hit set again to change the color temperature that the camera is actually going to use. If you select the custom white balance, you can use the trash or delete button on the camera to shoot a new custom white balance image. On top of this, if you press, and regardless of what mode you have selected, if you press info, it will take you to a user interface to adjust the white balance, shift, and bracketing settings. Now, probably the least capable in terms of total functionality mechanism for white balance settings is the dial function menu. Now, this is accessed through the MFN button, at least by default, and if it doesn't show up, you will need to go into your custom button, custom function 3, button customization, go to the MFN button, hit, I believe it's info to change the button settings and add white balance to the list of functions that you are controlling through that button if you want to access it that way. Now, the dial function menu only allows you to select what white balance mode the camera is in. So if you select auto, you can't change the auto specialization. If you select the color temperature value or mode, you can't change the color temperature preset. And if you select custom, you can't shoot or select a new custom white balance to use instead of the one that's currently active. Now, as a bonus, there is one more place on the camera where you can change the white balance settings, but it is not in the same sense as what we've previously talked about. So there is a custom button function called register/recall shooting function that allows you to save a preset of all sorts of shooting functions, the aperture or the exposure mode, white balance, shutter speed, aperture, all of those kinds of settings. Which ones you choose are completely up to you. And one of the settings you can save there is the white balance. So you can switch to that white balance mode if you are using the register recall function by holding the register recall button while you go to take a picture. So I kind of included this because it is a way to switch white balance modes, but it's not a way that's going to be especially useful probably in the vast majority of situations. Now, with changing white balances kind of out of the way or covered, the last two functions that I really want to talk about, or at least give you an overview of, are the white balance shift and bracket function and the custom white balance setup process. So white balance, shift, and bracket is accessed either through the Shoot 3 menu, where you have a white balance, shift, and bracket menu entry, or through the quick control menu by pressing info. In either event, it takes you to slightly different looking, but almost identical functioning displays. So you will find a grid with XY axes. The X-axis is for the color temperature, or the amber blue axis, and the vertical axis is the color correction or green magenta access. So this is a mechanism that allows you to make fairly fine adjustments to the white balance from whatever white balance your camera is set to. So if you were set to, say, daylight, you can add magenta to that or green to that. And if you change the color or camera to, say, tungsten, it will still preserve that offset from the white balance shift that you've set. So you're going to need to, be aware of making white balance shifts in the camera. Now, white balance shifts are available in both photo and movie modes, and as I said, they're useful for fine-tuning in certain situations where the normal white balance or even the custom white balance doesn't quite hit the situation or the nail right on the head. Now, the other option that you have available with the white balance shift and bracket menu is, of course, white balance bracketing. So white balance bracketing allows you to shoot a sequence of images with different white balance values, either in different color temperature or color correction. Now, what you can't do with the white balance bracketing is shoot a series of images, say, diagonally. So where one image has more green and amber and the other image has more magenta and blue, that kind of thing. So you can only go horizontally or vertically. Now, if you are a raw shooter, the white balance shift is really of little use to you, as white balance adjustments can be made in post in your raw editing software without any cost or quality loss compared to a JPEG. Well, without any cost or quality loss at all, I should say. So this is really going to be only useful for JPEG or HEIF shooters, people who are shooting compressed images. This is also not available in video, as that wouldn't make an awful lot of sense, as how do you bracket when you're shooting a video? Now, the final setting on the camera that I want to talk about with respect to white balance is setting custom white balances. And I'm going to have a much more detailed video on this simply because setting custom white balances can be an incredibly useful feature in a lot of circumstances, and there's a lot of sort of nuance that goes on in how you can go about doing this. That said, the short of it is you frame a white reference card in front of the camera so that it fills most of the frame on the screen. Then you either take a picture of that and then go to the Shoot 3 Custom White Balance menu and select that image as the custom white balance setting for your camera. You can also use this to transfer settings from one camera to another. The other way to go about doing that is through the quick control menu, where you select the custom white balance, then you hit the trash or delete button, and this will allow you to shoot a white balance or set a new custom white balance from an image that you are shooting right there at that time. So it does not have to be pre-recorded. And in fact, the white balance image that you make won't be saved to your card when you go through the quick control menu process. Now, as I said, the process of actually setting custom white balances and what you can do with it is a bit more complicated than I'm covering here. I really just wanted to talk about the basics of how to do it, so when I get to that video, I can not have to necessarily go through all of the details. That said, if that sounds like something you might be interested in, then you might want to subscribe and possibly even hit the bell to be notified when that video comes out. So that is white balance, or the menu system for white balancing on the EOS R5. I hope you found this useful or at least interesting. If you did, let me know by hitting that like button. If this kind of thing seems like it might be your kind of thing, please consider subscribing if you're not already. Finally, if you'd like to directly support this channel and future videos like this, please consider hitting that thanks button if you can. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.